I'd like to call to order the August 26th meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Cirksena. Councilmember Klein.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember McCoy.
Here.
Councilmember Judkins.
Here.
Councilmember Weaver.
Here.
We have everyone here or accounted for. If you'd please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know of no additions or changes to the agenda.
Move approval.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. The next item on our agenda is a proclamation for Library Card Sign-Up Month 2021. So I'd like to read that proclamation to you right now. Whereas the library card is the most essential school supply of all, whereas libraries and librarians play a crucial role in the education and development of children, whereas libraries offer a variety of programs to stimulate an interest in reading and learning, whereas library resources serve students of all ages, from early literacy to STEAM programs to research databases, whereas signing up for a library card is the first step on the path towards academic achievement and lifelong learning, whereas the library card gives students the tools that foster success in the classroom and beyond, whereas librarians create welcoming and inclusive spaces for students of all backgrounds to learn together and to engage with one another, whereas the library card empowers all people to pursue their dreams and explore new passions and interests, whereas libraries are constantly transforming and expanding services to meet the evolving needs of their communities. Therefore, be it resolved that I, John Edwards, Mayor Pro Tem, proclaim September Library Card Sign-Up Month in Clive and encourage everyone to sign up for their own library card today if they don't already have one. So we're very glad to read that proclamation. Next item would be our consent items, requires a resolution.
Move approval.
Oh, sorry, I breezed right by that. Thank you. Next item is the citizen presentation. This is the opportunity for anyone to come before the council on an item that is not on the agenda. Do we have anyone in the chambers here this evening or online, Pete?
For people participating online, you can get my attention. I'm Pete DeCook using the chat function on Zoom. And you can chat directly at me, or you can also raise your hand by using the raise hand icon. If you click on the participant icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, a separate window will open up and then you'll see the raise hand function. And for those participating by phone, if you will hit *6 to raise your hand and then *9 to unmute yourself. Mayor Pro Temp, I do not see any hands going up.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the consent item, requires a resolution.
Move approval.
We have a motion
Second.
and we have a second from Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote?
Aye. Mr. Mayor, I'll be voting verbally for a little bit here.
All righty. Then, and how are you voting?
Aye. Yes.
Aye. Okay, would the clerk please post the vote then? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the presentation, and Joyce.
If you'd like to join me, Kristen. We are excited to introduce to you our new human resource specialist, Kristen Kern. She comes to us from Life Care Services. That's where she's currently employed. And she has extensive background in human resources, benefits, payroll, and Employee Development. So we are very excited to have her joining our team on Monday, September 13th. So I'd like to welcome her, introduce her to
Hello.
you.
Welcome. Would you
Hi.
like to say a few words?
I'm just really excited to be here. This is actually the first city council that I've been a part of, so I'm excited for future events, and I'm just excited to get started. Nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Well, welcome. We're very glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our action items. The first one is the church at Deerfield Point. Amanda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, or Mayor Pro Tem, I guess. So tonight we have a site plan, preliminary plat, and development plan amendment, all being considered as kind of one plan set for the church at Deerfield Point. The entire site here, I know the council is somewhat familiar with. Can I get the
Amanda, one
docs?
moment. We're going to work on the camera here.
I know the council is somewhat familiar with, as we've discussed a few potential projects on this property over the last several years. But it is just shy of 14 acres. The preliminary plat does consider the entire property. But the site plan portion for the church just covers about 6.8 acres. So in total, the site is going to be divided into 4 lots for development. Those 3 remaining developable lots are each approximately 1.5 acres, so of a substantial size to fit a variety of possible commercial uses. And there are 2 outlots. Outlot X is the existing stormwater detention that will be reworked, but largely in the same format it is today, and will remain under its current operation. And Outlot Y includes a portion of the private drive. The Board of Adjustment did approve a special use permit for a religious institution in the C4 zoning district. Part of that consideration was a traffic impact study. So they did provide that. And it showed that the full build out conditions with all 4 lots fully developed were consistent with the DOT's Hickman corridor study. The interim recommendations for the initial church development just included signage to be implemented near the private driveway north of Walgreens and Arby's at those driveway entrances to those existing businesses, asking people to please not block the drives as they're leaving, so as not to create a backup for anyone that would be trying to enter off of 156th Street into those as like church services were letting out. Hey, perfect. Thank you,
It's on
Matthew.
my screen.
Oh, okay.
So just tell me where you want to go.
Thank you.
Our document camera is not cooperating with us.
All right, we'll make do. So the access to the site is, there are no new driveway entrances. It's the existing entrances off of 156th Street and Hickman Road. But that frontage road that currently serves Arby's and Walgreens will be extended all the way to the westernmost property line. And then that will continue on over to 161st Street with future development on the remaining properties to the west. I can't show the architecture. Matt, you have, I'm not sure what sheet that is in the PDF. But the architecture does meet our development standards with the 60% brick. That brick is primarily 3 tones of gray. And there is some ephes on the auditorium portion. The auditorium portion of the building is approximately 34 feet tall. And then there's a step down to 25 foot in height for the offices and classroom portions of the church. And that's the portions that would be nearer to the residential uses. There are no windows on the northeast or west elevations. If you want to go one more page for me, Matt. So you can see that the architect has added some additional variation in materials and colors there to kind of break up the large expanse of the building. For the buffering and landscaping, half of that buffer was provided on the townhome properties when this whole area was originally developed in the early 2000s. And a portion of the required open space to make up the additional buffer areas provided on the Outlot X for the stormwater. One of the conditions of the special use permit was enhanced screening being required adjacent to the residential properties. So it is hard to see on this. You can see all the little circles that are trees, but there is also a fence. Originally, it was proposed to be 6 foot tall. At the Planning and Zoning Commission, the neighbors requested an 8 foot tall fence that matches what is in the current covenant declaration, and the developer agreed to do that. So the fence will be an 8 foot tall wooden privacy fence with brick pilaster columns every 30 feet. And that does run the entire length of the buffer, just short of where the water main for Xenia crosses over by 156th Street. It stops a little bit short of that last lot, so as not to cross that water main. But it does also come down this northwest side here that is kind of zoomed in on the screen. So approximately where all the heavy trees stop will be about where that fence stops as well. There have been some minor relocation of trees from what was shown at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at the request of Xenia Rural Water. There was kind of a clustering of trees in the northeast corner of the church site that they wanted us to push a little bit further away from the water main. So that has been done, but it did not substantially impact any of the coverage in the buffer. Those were just general site trees, not buffer trees, that were relocated following that meeting. So the utilities are all planned to be installed as needed. We do have sufficient coverage out there. There is an 8-inch water main that will complete the connection from 156th Street. It'll come west and then down the private drive and continue to the basically the west property line over there, where there is another water main. So it'll complete that missing part of our system. And there's also an 8-inch public sanitary sewer. The rest of the utilities on site are private. And then the stormwater, as I'd stated, is the detention is largely being met in the existing facility with some upgrades. And there's also bioretention cells throughout the church site and soil quality restoration to meet those recharge requirements. So each of the development sites, those 3 remaining lots, would have similar kind of features for that water quality volume as those develop. We had received general inquiries, staff had, since the special use permit. I'd already touched on the Planning and Zoning Commission feedback that we received regarding the fence location. There was some discussion at that meeting also raised about some concerns with traffic, but since we do have that traffic impact study, staff doesn't have any significant concerns with that. And as I'd said, the developer did respond to those neighborhood concerns with the fencing and made those adjustments for tonight's consideration. So with that, we had recommended that only the local engineer attend in person. So we have Tyler Anderson present to answer questions. And then we have 2 other people for the development, Seth and Mason, both available on Zoom if you do have any questions. All these staff comments have been addressed and we would recommend approval, and you can expect to see the final plat in front of you most likely in October.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Questions for Amanda? Eric?
Amanda, thank you very much. A couple questions I do have. Staff had a lengthy list of adjustments on the site plan and preliminary plat. Pretty substantial amount of adjustments on that. Are you satisfied these have been made by the applicant?
Yes, yep, they've worked very diligently. It was a long review process. As we know, this site has some challenges with utilities and stormwater and drainage, but they were diligent in pursuing those and have addressed everything that we'd asked them to.
When we look at the impact of the neighborhood, especially the lighting and the noise, what is your assessment as far as the number of lumens that might affect the neighborhood and also a noise factor that might affect the neighbors as well?
Yep, so the lighting will have the cut shields to the north and west, and their photometric plan that's included in the site plan submittal in your packet does show that they are reaching 0 lumens or foot candles before that property line they're sharing with the residential properties. So it really shouldn't be any significant change in the kind of urban light pollution that we just generally have when you live in town. There should not be any significant impact to the neighbors from this development as far as that goes. For the noise component, this church does, the plan tenant has their Sunday services, but they'd indicated they don't do a lot of other during the week kind of congregation activities. So the noise concerns I mean, you'll hear cars and things like you do on any road, but it should not be substantial.
Are you satisfied with the stormwater management plan, that it meets Clive's current ordinance regarding soil quality and the ability to, handle that excess water from the parking lot?
Yes.
And let's see here. And then the other, was it 3 or 4 lots that were undeveloped?
It'll be 3 lots created, one up along Hickman, just west of Arby's, and then 2 set back behind.
What are those zoned for?
They are zone C4 commercial, which is a wide range of commercial uses, office, medical, retail, restaurant. You can put quite a bit there.
We have any indication from the owner, the developer, what he's going to put in there?
At this time, we don't. I do know their traffic impact study considered a drive-through facility, somewhat like a Starbucks or a McDonald's, and a medical clinic. Those were most likely chosen for that exercise since they are a higher traffic generator. They would pick some of the highest uses to make sure that their assumptions were good and they would not have to redo the traffic impact study with different tenants. I don't know if the developers can possibly speak to if they've had any conversations, but not that staff has been made aware of.
Any response back? Last question. Any response back from the neighborhood or the neighbors on this development?
We had talked at length initially and with the special use permit. My interactions with the neighbors have been largely positive with the project. Once the fencing and those kinds of questions had been addressed. I know we do have some here tonight, so I would let them speak for themselves, of course.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions for Amanda? Not yet.
That was thorough. Appreciate it.
Okay. And anyone here who wants to comment on that? If so, please give us your name and address for the record.
Mary Langen, I live at 16050 Sheridan Avenue in Clive, and I have 2 questions for Amanda. Could you explain again, you went over in your talk tonight about how the driveway off of 156 to get to the church takes you in, and then it continues to 161st?
Yes. So Matt, if you can kind of just scroll a little bit. Yep, thank you. You can see there on the right side of the screen where the driveway comes in, where that little hand is showing, and then it will come south just a little bit west of the existing Arby's to line up with the existing driveway. And then from that point, it will turn left there along where the parking is off. That road will eventually, when the properties to the west develop, it will continue all the way to 161st Street. Which gets you to a traffic light for a controlled intersection.
But 161st Street is a boulevard. It's a boulevard with grass in the middle.
Yes.
So that street would be changing to a street with a stoplight?
That is what is programmed or recommended in the Hickman corridor study, that it will eventually meet the warrants to have a traffic signal at that intersection. So the entrance, somewhat like this site where that entrance off of 156th Street is not just right down by Hickman, it's north of the development. It would be similar to that to line up with the existing cut in the median.
So
on
the
161st.
driveway would run parallel with Hickman, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Another question, if you go to the fence that runs from 156th all the way to the cul-de-sac, which is my association, that fence is going to be straight across there. And if you get to the corner on the west side, does that fence just end with a pedestal, or will that fence continue toward the south? The south, because I would hate to see people cutting through with no fence onto our property and our townhomes on the cul-de-sac.
So it will continue down to the end of where it abuts those existing townhomes and residential zoning. So you can see kind of where Matt is circling there with the hand. There's a clustering of trees, and there are kind of 2 circles right next to each other about halfway down the screen there. That is approximately where that fence will end.
But is that third square our third townhome on the cul-de-sac? So that fence it will only cover 2 of our units, and the 3rd unit will be where if kids wanted to cut through or whatever, that's where the fence will end, and that would get them directly into our cul-de-sac.
And no, it goes all the way to the end of the townhome units. So there won't be any of the townhome units along that side without fence behind it.
Okay. And then in what you read tonight, did they cover that they said at the last meeting that they would be providing trees for anything over 3 inch in diameter? They would replant a tree for every tree removed?
Yes, that is a standard requirement in our ordinance that they would have to replace anything they take down.
And who is responsible for enforcing that?
So we have the plans that show where the trees are located. So we go out there and we do the inspection and would see that those trees had been removed and they would have to replant.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And would it be fair to say that, sometimes we see these developments, new developments, that those trees, right, die within a year or 2 or 3 or what have you. So even the residents could call in and with concerns of the tree counts and
Absolutely.
replacements and.
I think Ms. Langen, is specifically referring to for the installation of the fence.
Mhm.
There are some trees that we know will have to be removed in order to put a fence through. So any additional that have to be removed over what they accounted for will be replaced.
Inside that property.
Yep, along with the original development. But then Councilmember McCoy is correct. They are required to maintain that until the buffer is in a full, complete state. So if those trees die over the next year or 2 after construction, which does sometimes happen, we've seen it this year with the heat. We've had some trees die, that they are obligated to replace those.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else present have questions about the church at Deerfield Point? If not, the first item we
Move the
have
site plan and preliminary plat.
a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote on the site plan and preliminary plat? And would the clerk please post those votes? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving amended development plan.
Second.
And a second from Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post the vote? That resolution passes 5-0.
Move the resolution approving First Amendment to Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions.
Second.
Second by Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? That resolution passes 5-0.
Move the resolution approving stormwater maintenance agreement.
Second.
Second by Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0. That concludes our coverage on the church at Deerfield Point. Our next item is a site plan for the Tidal Wave Auto Spa. Jill.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So tonight you have in front of you a site plan for Tidal Wave Auto Spa. They are looking at the site at 11410 Forest Avenue. That is the former Applebee's location. Since Applebee's closed some time ago, it's been vacant since. So this is the first application we've had for that. So we're looking at a complete redesign here of the site. They're planning on demoing all of the existing parking and building and constructing new. So what you see is the plan for this is a tunnel style car wash that's kind of the typical standard now of one car, entering and they go through in a line. So traffic would come through off of Forest, split into 2 lanes. They enter a pay kiosk where a person will be that's covered by a canopy as well. And then there is an opportunity to exit through if, someone needs to, or obviously go through the tunnel. And then after that, the parking lot consists of 24 vacuum stalls. That's why those parking stalls look so much bigger than an average parking stall, because the vacuum equipment is going to be there as well. And those are covered by a canopy with that middle section and the front section are covered by canopies, providing shade for those areas. There's an additional 4 parking stalls along Forest Avenue, opposite of the front of the building. Those are designated for employee parking that will not have a canopy. And then there are some other structures on the site. In the center section, kind of to the north, the white box. Yep, that's the vacuum house that holds all of the vacuum equipment that's going to run those machines for each one of the stalls. As I mentioned, the canopy for the pay kiosk, and then also the dumpster enclosure is clear on the north side towards the entrance, and that's screened as well. With 24 stalls, our current code allows for 5 parking stalls per wash bay, because when it was written, typically you had multiple wash bays, not just one. So with this, they need an abundance of stalls beyond our current code. So with that, they have to make that space up in landscaping, which they've done. So beyond our 25% minimum for the site, they have to provide an additional 7,250 square feet, which they have easily made. They're a little over 40% in open space. So that isn't a concern for staff to have those extra parking stalls for their use. Stormwater for the site, it pretty much drains into a underground storage tank, which is right in front of the building. Those little boxes, south a little bit. Yep, right in there is the underground storage, and then that connects to existing systems that drain from Hickman along the interstate. And then if you want to move to the architecture sheets. There we go. So as I mentioned, it's one primary building that houses the car wash that's made up with mostly windows and a little bit of EIFS, a metal roof, and then masonry makes up the rest of that. The canopies are matching, and then as you can see, the other structures are also matching those same components that are used in the main structure. We also have a representative from Tidal Wave Auto Spa, as well as the project manager is here on Zoom. If you have any questions, or else the P&Z recommended approval. There are just a couple items left in the comment letter, but they are very minor in nature, just related to stormwater, fixing a couple items. And so staff would recommend approval if you have any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Eric?
Yeah, a couple questions, Jill. One of the things that intrigued me about this was the wastewater solution right there. My question is when they're utilizing this wastewater solution, would they incorporate settling tanks, oxidation, filtration, flocculation, and ozone methods, or how do they plan on recycling that water?
The rep from Tidal Wave can probably answer that. Thanks, John.
No, not a problem. John LaPointe, yeah, we have 3 water reuse tanks that I think, Joe, you mistakenly pointed to. It's okay. So we have 3 water reuse tanks and an oil water separator that we allow to reuse. So it takes us from about 55 or 45% less water reuse. So we reuse that, circulate it back into the tunnel, then reuse that for the bottom part of the car to try to save some water. So use oxidation.
Real quick too, just for the record.
What was that?
Just identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. This probably be a little easier. John LaPointe, Brightwork Real Estate. We're the developer for Tidal Wave
Thanks, John.
out of Tampa, Florida.
Last question. Is it indicated in the staff report that Tidal Wave donated for one day a month or something to a local charity or something of that nature? I just want to recommend that you would donate that to the Clive Festival, which works with, I'm not joking.
No, I'll discuss it with her.
Which I would.
I don't make
just
that
a strong
decision, but I know
suggestion.
they do a lot of good work. So
Yeah. So just for the record, I wanted to request that will you consider the Clive Festival for your donation? It's because that strongly works with kids and community members as well.
I will take it back to them.
Thank
I
you.
promise.
Other questions? If not, what we're looking at is a motion to approve the site plan.
Move approval of the site plan for Tidal Wave Auto Spa.
Second.
And we have a second from Mike. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? That passes 5-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, we have a site plan amendment for Stu Hansen Hyundai. Amanda.
Thank you. Matt, this one begins on page 432 of the packet. So today we are considering a site plan amendment for the Stu Hansen Hyundai main dealership building. That was previously developed as part of the Holmes Auto Dealership that has kind of been subdivided out now into multiple properties. That was developed in the 1980s. So was not under our current zoning requirements, just to keep in mind. The building elevation change in the front, you can see there is a darker gray box on the south side there. Thank you, Matt. That is an addition that will remove the existing overhang that is there, that then gets turned into some customer parking at the front, and then an enlargement of their kind of customer service front for the main entrance of the building. That portion is about 2,000 square feet. The rear addition is for the actual auto service. It's approximately 6,500 square feet. That rear portion will have the precast concrete panels that match the existing building, and the front is primarily windows with some of the accented EFIS panels that match the current Hyundai branding. This is located in the C2 zoning district, so it has different design standards than our C4 zoning that we see most of our new development in. So these materials are consistent with the development standards for what we have there with the existing building. For the parking access and circulation, the overall site circulation is not significantly changed. It does shift around a little bit towards the north rear of the building, just because there is a new building there, but largely that is the circulation pattern you see today with customer parking in the front and then inventory parking behind the building. For the landscaping and open space, this is where the being built in the 1980s comes into play. The original site was constructed with far fewer trees than we would require today due to the existing surfacing on the property already. They will not quite meet the current standard, but it is a significant increase, basically doubling the number of trees that are on site today through this process. So as we've done with other projects that are predating our ordinance, we incrementally work with those developers to make improvements without being overly burdensome, so they can't improve the building. So staff is comfortable with the amount of tree coverage that we're seeing on this project and is happy with what they're proposing for that. And we are actually getting an increase in the site open space. They will exceed the 25% required for auto dealerships. They are adding the parking lot islands in several locations. They do not exist today, so that's how they're getting that increase. The site is being serviced by existing utilities, including the existing sprinkler for the building is able to be expanded into the new additions. And they will be adding a new sand oil separator and service line for that, just kind of back by the new service addition towards the north. The tanks that were on site, underground storage tanks, have been removed through the proper DNR permitting, so that has been completed already. And then stormwater will utilize the existing basin, which is just south of what is currently on the screen. That basin will be modified with a rock trench that will help provide some additional storage to get it up to our current requirements. And then there will be a new 4-bay constructed with that will meet the water quality volume requirements. We have not received any public comments or inquiries that I'm aware of. All comments, staff comments in the letter have been addressed. Plan and Zoning Commission recommended approval with no conditions, and staff would also recommend approval.
Questions for Amanda? Eric?
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just one, I like this plan and it really looks good. One thing I've brought up numerous times just on dealerships in general is that tire storage piece. And I know they've done some work around that area with, with the new car wash and such, but getting those enclosed.
Yes.
And
This, I did not mention, you can kind of see in the northwest, yep, right there. There is a new dumpster and tire enclosure for this specific Hyundai site. So that'll be taken care of.
Right.
Thank you for reminding
that
me.
was a big improvement on that other one further down. So thank you.
Susan?
No questions, thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, any impact to traffic on 114th Street for this project?
I mean, we might have some minor impact with the construction equipment as they're coming and going, but there should not be any significant impacts since it was really contained to the existing site.
Thank you, Amanda. Anyone in the council chambers with questions on this? If not, we need,
Move approval of site plan for Stu Hansen Hyundai.
and do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post the vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving declaration of site restrictions.
Well, yes, yeah, I think you skipped. We're done with it.
Yes.
Amanda?
Yep. So as Councilman Klein just pointed out, there are 2 Stu Hansen projects on the agenda tonight. The other one is actually across the street and just slightly south of the existing dealership facility and kind of across the street from City Hall and a little north. So this is currently an undeveloped site that Hyundai will be developing for an inventory and employee parking. They did go through the variance process with that. Our ordinance today requires that any auto display and sales includes a 2,000 square foot building for sales and service. We have had some situations with these larger national dealerships that they just need more inventory space. So this is going to be very similar to the existing site that's just on the other side over on 111th for the Smart Honda facility. It'll be very similar to that. So the Board of Adjustment did approve that variance, feeling that it met the intent of the ordinance since this is directly associated with the existing dealership. So we are still providing that high quality customer service and experience that is the standard we expect here in Clive. So you can see this is just a parking lot for the most part. There is parking lot lighting as well as islands. The dimensions and everything meet our ordinance requirements. And they are able to maintain the existing stormwater facilities that were on that site. This property was originally intended to be a second phase of mini storage development. They determined that that was not a project they were going to move forward with. And a few months ago, platted this into a separate lot so it could be sold off. So this is the development that is before you tonight. There will be no customer interactions on site. The driveway entrance will line up with the entrance directly across the street from it. And as I said, the existing trees will primarily be preserved, particularly the ones along the right-of-way that are already in place. I think they have to remove one for the driveway entrance. There may be a few south of the parking lot area that have to come out and be replaced due to grading work, but primarily they should remain undisturbed throughout the construction and be protected. There is no need for site utilities, and as part of the final plat approval, there was an agreement to complete to remove the existing water service line that is there. So that will be completed at the time the construction takes place to satisfy that agreement to complete. So with that, we have received no public comments and there are no outstanding staff comments, so we would recommend approval.
Thank you, Amanda. Questions? Mike?
I don't know if there's so much questions as maybe comments, or feedback. I get it. I understand it. I get it from the dealership side. Doesn't mean I like it. The alternative was a storage facility, so, but we did put I thought some restrictions on that storage facility for like the frontage and the facade, and kind of so you don't see the inner workings, made it look like that brick and this. Where I don't mind the parking lot, I understand it for the auto dealership. Is there any way you can buffer that with a berm or something, so you're not looking back into this wide open concrete pad, right? Which brings on a whole bunch more stuff when it comes to the green belt being right there and all. But again, the alternative was a storage building, so it wasn't perfect either. But
so from the greenbelt side of things, it is fairly well buffered, or will be once those trees get to maturity, be fairly well buffered. There is, as I stated, the existing trees along 114th Street. Those are still fairly small. But then there is some additional parking lot landscaping on the street side of the parking lot that will be included, similar to what was approved with the Smart Honda project last year, I think.
But it's just road level. I mean, just flat, nothing rolling that can break up that look.
I think there is a slight grade bermed at the front of this one, but I mean, it is a parking lot.
Can they not? Maybe trick question. Can they not afford to give up that front parking spaces for more of a little taller berm that we're looking into a grass hill with trees on it instead of a giant?
I would,
concrete
we do have
parking lot?
some on joining us tonight. I would let them address that if they could respond. Tim?
One moment, Tim.
And Tim, if you could give us your name and address for the record.
Yeah, good evening. This is Tim West with Snyder and Associates. So we were the civil engineer and landscape architect for the project. If you were to go to the sheet 7, it kind of shows the landscaping in there a little bit further. We're establishing another tree to kind of put it in between the parking stalls that are kind of buffering in there. We've also added quite a bit of plant material along that side. Those are representative, or those symbols are representing a larger ornamental grass to provide some height. We also have a bioretention stormwater feature that's along those between the parking lot and the shrubs. And so those plant materials that are associated in that little swath in there can get up to 4.5 feet tall. So there's going to be some plant material screening in there. If you were to take a look at the grading plan, we're approximately, we're about the same elevation as a little bit higher than the roadway in there. So we do sit a little bit higher. If we sat too high, we would be, you'd be seeing the vehicles even more to some degree. So we kind of picked a happy medium in there as far as the grade went, so that we could, we weren't setting it too far up in the air, and we were still able to utilize the plant material to screen the cars that would be sitting in that stall area. As far as to the question of the yield, based on normally this would be an inventory lot, and we would be looking at trying to maximize the, the comings and goings of cars that are held for inventory uses. By incorporating more landscaping into the lot itself, it reduced the amount of vehicles that we could stage on site. So I guess we worked with city staff to increase the landscaping and reduce heat island effect by providing trees and open space more within the parking lot, which isn't necessarily needed for display parking, but or inventory parking, more for display parking. So we'd like to maintain the number as high as possible so that the use of the lot is worth the costs that are associated with the satellite lot to make up for some of the lack of inventory space that's being created by the expansion of the dealership.
Well, I appreciate that answer. I'm not sure it went to my question though. And perhaps even against my question, and that is, and that frontage to the road, you're saying that there's a bioreactor swale there, which is actually going to be lower for that water retention. And then the plant life inside there will be such that it's, grows taller. I'm not a huge fan of sometimes what plants are growing in those and how they grow, especially for the frontage of a major road like that coming up into what it is coming into. It's at the entrance of that 114 or 114. So that's not really a selling point to me personally. I'm not asking for the parking lot to be higher, of course, and I think that's what you indicated. I'm asking for the frontage, that actual bioswale, to be higher, so that when you look from 114th, you're not seeing a sea of concrete.
The ornamental shrubs or the ornamental grasses are lined through the whole side to make that more of a refined landscape. So I understand your comment on the plants that would be associated with bioretention. So it's kind of more refined from the sidewalk and the right of way. On the parking side, you would see maybe the more naturalistic view of that biocell. We're kind of taking a delicate balance of trying to maintain water quality, interior landscaping, and shading. And I think if we were to try to make changes to the frontage there, we would have to eliminate the bioretention and be able to go up and down with a berm in that location instead of a depression to handle stormwater quality. Pretty important as part of the code to maintain or maximize that for water quality before it goes into the creek. So
couldn't you do that same thing inside those islands, inside that concrete? I mean, we're talking now, you're now telling me there's a depression in that area. We're going even further away from what I'm looking at. Again, I'm one voice here, but that is a gateway to this road. And I would ask staff, can we work with them on the islands and make those bio cells, bio swales, and allow the frontage to be a berm,
Yeah, we could certainly go back and evaluate that as an option.
I'm not so worried about what's in here, right? I'm not going to go in there and hang out and look at the view. It's going to be everyone driving by that's looking in that giant concrete pad.
And I would just clarify, the islands and tree plantings within the lot are a zoning code requirement. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they could be this they could help.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
water instead of, it's just my thought there.
Thank you, Michael. Anything from anyone else on the council or anyone present here? If not, we've got three
Move the
items.
site plan approving Stu Hansen Hyundai at 2085 Northwest 104th Street.
Do we have a second? We have a second from Susan. Further discussion to approve the site plan? Would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote for it, but I really want to see something come back that has options. So I'm reluctant, but you're going to get your votes either way, so.
Thank you for your comments.
So is that a yes, just for clarification? on the record?
Reluctantly, yes.
Thank you.
And the clerk can post those votes, and it's 5-0 with one of those a reluctant yes.
Move the resolution approving declaration of site restrictions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? That passes 5-0.
Move the resolution assigning address.
Second.
And we have a second from Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? That also passes 5-0 and includes our 2 items for Stu Hansen Hyundai. Amanda, you're still up looking at.
Still me. Yeah, so tonight we are finally ready to final plat the first phase of the Shadow Creek North development. You will fairly quickly see Shadow Creek Plat 6 also coming in. We anticipate that to be in front of you next month, which is why there's a much needed chunk of the road connecting Westgate Parkway not shown on this plat here, but that has been constructed. So this plat is before you with an agreement to complete some of the public improvements. This is pretty standard with these larger single family subdivisions. So that is also approved with the resolution tonight. So the plat 5 is approximately 34 acres and there are 61 single family lots being created that will now be able to start issuing building permits on. For the lot layout and home construction, the lot sizes and layout for this plat is consistent with the PUD zoning change and development agreement that was approved in early 2020, as well as with the preliminary plat that was also approved last year. There are 30-foot front yard setbacks throughout, and then the lots are split between some requiring 8-foot side setbacks and some requiring 7-foot side setbacks because we have that staggered minimum lot sizes that you can kind of see over on the bulk regulation side of the plat. That is also consistent with the development agreement master concept plan that was approved. This plat also has the architectural review committee with the same minimum standards that was established for Shadow Creek Plat 4. So it'll be a very similar process and similar product that gives a little more flexibility for those individual homeowners and developers to have some more creative materials while going through that architectural review committee. Staff's been very happy with the output we've been seeing from that. So we were comfortable recommending continuation of that for the north side of the creek developments as well. All the public streets except Westgate are a 26-foot back-to-back curb and a 50-foot right-of-way. Westgate continues with the standard 40-foot right-of-way and 20-foot city improvement easement on either side. And we'll have the typical Westgate treatments with the 8-foot sidewalk recreation trail on one side, that's the curvy, 5-foot sidewalk on the other, and then the street trees and other landscaping along the streets as well, with the homes forced to front on Westgate when they are the corner lots with other streets. You will have a trail connection between lot 13 and 14, which is, yep, right there, perfect, that goes down into that outlot Z. And then outlot Z is the big spot that's not the single family lots. That is the parkland dedication. There is 2.8 acres that is greenbelt and 3.5 acres of that is the combination stormwater that receives half credit at the parkland dedication. So this plat is having a combined 4.55 acres dedicated. They're required to dedicate 1.4 acres. The first 2 plats are heavy on the parkland dedication to make up for the plats to the north, which will not have as much because they're not adjacent to the greenbelt. So that was the intent with the master concept plan that was approved. We knew that would be phased like that. The sanitary is provided from the Little Walnut Creek Sanitary Trunk Sewer. That is included. The fees will be paid as part of the development process before this is recorded. The storm sewer is a mix of public and private because there are a lot of lines that run through and pick up backyard swales. So those will be private lines, and then when they connect with the city facilities that go to the right of way, then it will turn to a public system. And then water along Westgate Parkway will be a 12-inch main that is installed. It will eventually get all the way to Meredith. And then throughout the development, it will be 8-inch water mains. There is just one stormwater pond on Outlot Z and Plat 5. And you will see 6 inches of topsoil throughout for that water quality volume to get the nice healthy respread. The resolution, as I'd stated, includes approval of all of the easements that were identified as being needed, as well as that agreement to complete. We have not received any comments. We did recommend that, since this is the final plat, that our developers just attend virtually tonight with our COVID precautions. So we do have them on Zoom to answer any questions for you. With that, we would recommend approval with just executing the remainder of the legal documents as a condition.
Thank you. Questions? Eric?
Amanda, on that lot Z right there, is that connected to the Greenbelt Park or the trail or anything? Or how does that look into the big picture of the Greenbelt expansion?
Yep, so right directly behind it is the Greenbelt. So at some point in the future, there will be that trail extension is intended to run through there. And that will continue all the way over to Warrior Lane in the future. And that would be, the city would be the one installing that trail.
Mike?
Just a confirmation between 13 and 14's bike trail, the width of that is, I think it's 13 and 14.
I don't recall if it's an 8-foot connection or a 10-foot connection because of the equipment to get to the stormwater detention. But it's one of the, either 8 or 10 are standard.
Okay, thanks.
Is that an easement or is that an actual trail or a concrete?
It is an easement that will be graded to have the trail platform, similar to what was done in like Shadow Creek Plat 3 and Courtyards. So then at the point that the city installs the remainder of the trail, we have the grading in place so we can go ahead and install those connections into the neighborhood.
I just have to say, I'm really enjoying the fact that this looks like a bird land. So I appreciate that.
Just needs a little beak, yeah.
I see it now.
Well, I don't know how we follow up on that. Are there
It's more
any,
enjoyable now that I see it.
any other questions? Otherwise, we're looking for a resolution.
Move the resolution approving final plat for Shadow Creek Plat 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote on the resolution? And that passes 5-0. Jim, I think you're up next with Hickman Road and Berkshire Parkway.
Jim, we haven't seen you for a while.
Oh, if you can get those.
That's a good thing, huh?
I got you eventually. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Before you tonight to introduce a project that will be undertaken next construction season in 2022, and that is for the installation of traffic signals at the Hickman Road and Berkshire Parkway intersection. Based on corporate limits in the area, this will be a 50-50 split cost share with the city of Waukee. Snyder and Associates is the design engineer. Their preliminary cost estimate is $650,000. So Clive's portion of that would be half, or $325,000. Very straightforward project. Obviously, biggest piece of the puzzle is getting the poles and the mast arms in the ground. In addition to that, the left turn lanes on Hickman Road will be lengthened to provide more storage for turning vehicles. And the sidewalk ramps in all 4 quadrants will be slightly modified to make sure we have ADA compliance at the end of the project. Current schedule has a November letting and award, and again, construction will follow next year in 2022. Another reason we're here before you tonight is we are looking at initiating a special assessment process to cover the costs on the project. The map that's pulled up there shows 20 commercial lots in the Berkshire Commons Office Park, plats 1 and 2. I'm just going to read from the assessment document to make sure I explain this correctly or attempt to. The properties in the assessment schedule are subject to a petition waiver clause included as part of a previously executed development agreement. And that clause waives all legal formalities associated with this assessment process. So that means that any property owner of record at the time of the improvements can be assessed a portion of the total project cost. So with that in mind, the assessment document that's included in your packet does split the total cost between these 20 commercial lots. So again, that's the $325,000 divided by 20. So the preliminary assessment amount shown in the document is just over $16,000 per lot. The city's bonding attorneys have provided additional information and laid out steps to start the process tonight. The main action item is setting the public hearing on the resolution of necessity for your September 30th meeting. The preliminary assessment amounts will be set at that time. And again, as a reminder, at the time that the preliminary assessment is set, that sets the ceiling or maximum that can be assessed. The variable there is always how do bids come in. If they come in below that, then the final assessment amount can be lowered when we run through that process at the end of the project. So with that in mind, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the project or the assessment process.
Eric?
I'd make a motion. This is the first time I've seen the A on this one. That's all I was asking. Make a motion designating Jim as the Clive engineer.
And do we have a second? Further discussion? We'll see how well you do, Jim.
We can take nominations from the floor, maybe.
Does anybody else want it? I meant to say Roxanne.
Would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? Congratulations, Jim. This passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Move the resolution identifying Hickman Road and Berkshire Parkway, Waco Place traffic signalization special assessment project.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Not. Would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes 5-0.
Move the resolution approving and adopting preliminary plans and specifications, estimate of cost, and plat and schedule.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Matt?
Just a couple of quick points, Your Honor, before we get to this one and the next one. Number one, we are looking to submit a grant application to mitigate some of the costs for this special assessment. That would take the cost down per lot. So that is something that we wanted to offer too, that we're working with Joaquin on that. Secondarily, now that the DC trip has been canceled, we had originally moved this council meeting back a week because of that to September 30th. I bring this up as if the council desires to bring it back to the normal schedule before you make these next two actions, that would need to be decided. Again, if we're comfortable with keeping September 30th for now, this just kind of locks us in with the public hearing notification. So before we did those actions, I wanted to make sure I brought that up to the council before that.
Thank
I
you.
have a preference to keep it on the 22nd, 23rd,
Oh, yeah, 20, it'd be
The
moving
original-
it back to the
original
23rd.
just because I'm kind of hoping to have a conflict there on September 30th. And if I do, then I wouldn't be able to participate in that meeting.
You're hoping to have a conflict.
I know. I think there is going to be a recognition for my husband that evening,
Cool.
if he can be there.
Perfect.
So if the councils, we would have an action on the next agenda to move that meeting back to the 23rd, if the council's comfortable with that. And then I would ask them when we go into these actions, just to amend that date for the public hearing of necessity.
Okay.
To make sure that that's reflected. We don't have any other public hearings that we've set for that date. This would be the one that we would need to decide now before we do it. So that's why I wanted to stop.
One
there.
of your girls.
Ted, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No problem.
Okay, so, all right, so That resolution was moved with the idea that the meeting would be on the 23rd.
C was moved, right?
Yes,
C was moved.
You moved C.
I'm guessing you have that date in that schedule, that schedule document, so.
Right, so everyone clear on that, that we're talking about the C resolution, but with a scheduled date of a public hearing on the 23rd. All right, we've got a motion and a second, I believe, and so would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. We have one final item.
Move the motion introducing resolution of necessity and setting a public hearing for September 23rd, 2021, 6 p.m. on the resolution of necessity.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, noting that we did change the date to the 23rd. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote?
Your Honor, while that vote is being taken, I just conferred with legal counsel. We could have, Matthew will need a minute to set this action up. We could do a motion just for you to reschedule that council meeting now. We don't even have to wait till the next meeting, and we just get it done.
Very good. That motion passes 5-0, and so I would now entertain a motion to reschedule our September 30th rescheduled council meeting to its original September 23rd date.
It's all yours, Weaver.
Ted, you want to make that motion, get in the minutes?
I'll make the motion to reschedule the September 30th meeting to September 23rd.
Second.
We have a motion by Ted and a second by Eric. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote?
You all good, Matthew?
He's got it.
It's fast.
Yes. Could you please post the vote? And that motion passes 5-0. So be sure your calendars are corrected, that we'll be meeting on the 23rd.
I will send a reminder out tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Next, Richard, you have good news to share with us about the Clive Festival.
Let me pull the presentation up here.
And you're taking credit for the weather, is that correct?
Absolutely. Anytime it's good, it's I'll take all the credit for it.
Small
If it's
Richard.
not, it's Doug Small.
How it goes, Doc.
Perfect. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, very excited tonight to give this recap of the very perfect weather Clive Festival from earlier this year. One of the things we really wanted to do is focus on really kind of capturing this event this year, because we didn't have a lot of pictures of this. So just kind of going through some of the events and some of the people and the activities that happen. It was just really a great weekend, and I was very excited to be able to see this for the first time since I started, and really think it's important to celebrate what a good year it was coming off of COVID and being able to get out and celebrate as a community. Like we talked about, the weather was perfect. I think they call this like Chamber of Commerce weather. 84 degrees on Friday and 81 degrees on Saturday. It was partly cloudy, partly sunny. You couldn't have asked for a better day. Just great. No rain, no cancellations. Really just turned out to be what we needed to get people out in big numbers here this summer.
That's great about the weather, but how did Weaver do in bags?
I'll have to get back to you on
All
that
right,
one.
thanks.
I did better than the McCoy team. Let's put it that way.
My partner was hamstringed with me.
And one thing is really important for us to talk about. While the leisure services team is the one that leads this, and Doug kind of makes sure that everything goes well with this event, it's really truly a team event across the city, from the library, working on the Touch a Truck event, the book sale. We had the Kids for Art. The police department helps us out a ton with street closures, securities. Public Works helps us out with cones, barricades, and message boards. We really rely on the admin team for the beverage tent, making sure we're able to process all the credit cards, take the cash, get the permits. The fire department takes that slip and slide and runs with it. And then Parks does a lot of the setup and tear down of the actual physical spaces there. Also too, this wouldn't happen without volunteers. This year we had 54 volunteers, totaling about 148 hours. And then also to cover a few extra shifts we had late at night, we used 49 staff hours. This is the seasonal summer staff that we use out at the concession stand at Campbell Park at a cost of about $672 to the city. So, attendance is always going to be a moving target. You got to take your best guess and figure out how many people you think are there, because there's a lot of people coming and going. So based on our 2019, we estimated about 5,200 people showed up for Clive Festival and all the events we had that year. This year, we've estimated about 9,500 with approximately 300 coming to the Touch a Truck. We had over 400 come to the book sale. The fire department took over 1,100 waivers for the slip and slide. We had 1,800 visitors at the aquatic center over those 2 days. And it's really hard to tell at the concerts, but we think on Saturday night we had about 3,000 and Friday night was probably in the neighborhood of 1,500 roughly. Overall, every event was packed no matter what it was. The special events building was packed with people playing bingo for several hours. It was just overall, it was a great community event that the community really came out and celebrated. In terms of financial revenue and expenses, we have about $46,475 is the revenue that was brought in through all the different activities, through the beverage garden, grants and sponsorships, some of the vendor fees, the Greenbelt fundraiser, goat feed, bingo, and the food trucks, and a total expenses of about $42,253. So that's the fireworks being at $14,000, the beverages we bought from Dahl Distributing and 515, the cost for the stage, music, sound, artists, and then just a lot of miscellaneous other things such as the staff costs and any other. Sometimes we had to buy an additional tent or some supplies. Sometimes we had to replace the plastic for the slip and slide. So that kind of falls under the miscellaneous.
Did you mention goat feed on revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Down bottom left.
I heard him the first time. Just want to make sure everybody else did.
There's no royalties in those expenses either.
So now as we kind of start to look for next year, we've targeted the dates of July 15th and 16th, 2022. One of the things we wanted to do before we set a date is make sure what are some other conflicts in the area. Are there other cities that are doing events that might pull attendance away from that? So we think July 15th and 16th will be a good weekend for that. We're looking at ways to grow our sponsorships next year, also ways to maybe potentially reduce some of the costs. One of the things we're potentially targeting is, do we need to have that Jumbotron come out there for the event? Or is there a way to find someone else that could provide a similar service? So we're looking at a lot of different things like that, from the sponsorships to the revenue to the ways to cut some of the costs. And then we're also being prepared for potentially having to move some of the festival because of pending construction for Greenbelt Landing. So we're kind of doing as is normal kind of layout and plan for it, but then we're also looking at where we could do some of the other activities offsite compared to where it is now, most likely being the gravel area above the aquatic center and the vacant lots where the slip and slide is.
Satellite maybe feature at
Yeah.
Lenan Park.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about maybe putting some offsite events at Lynn Ann or Campbell to kind of spread it out when we don't have as much room there. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Also, I want to say Doug is here, and I really want to thank him and his team for all the work they did to pull the festival off, with some uncertainty as we went into it, because we didn't know where COVID was going to be and how the community would respond to events. So with that.
Very good. Comments from council? Eric?
Yeah, Richard, first of all, tremendous event. You guys really had the perfect storm, really what it came out to. And with that, I think first and foremost, staff planning and execution of the event is a key fundamental building block of that. The fact that you had perfect weather.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what this event looks like when it's 105 degrees out or whatever.
No, we don't.
I'd also mention that coming off COVID, these are always going to give you a big bump, right? People were inside. It's a great event right there. But last not the least, I think it's important to understand that this event was set up by efforts from volunteers in the past.
Mhm.
You were set up for success and not for failure. The amount of money that was generated in the past, the equipment that was purchased that you now utilize, a lot of the volunteer base, the programming right there. So you were given a turnkey operation for success. I want to recognize people like Chris Murphy and Lindsay Barr that spent countless hours. And Doug had, matter of fact, mentioned to me how many hours it took that he was working on it right there. Consider this, consider working a full-time job and planning all this. That's the kind of dedication that Clive community volunteers put in this event for many, many years to help set you up for success right there. One of the key things, and again, the drivers for your metrics for success here, the high attendance, right? That's huge numbers. That's awesome. And that looks to me like record revenues at 42,000 right there. So tremendous right there. Moving forward in the future, just a couple of tweaks, because really it was a tremendous event. An ATM on site might be helpful.
Very much so.
And continued sponsorships would be a good one. I think we talked about one tonight that would be a tremendous benefit to the festival moving forward on a yearly basis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things Doug did is kind of got all the key players from our team together and said, hey, what went well, what didn't go well, what should we look at changing for next year? So we've got a whole list of things that we're going to start working through. But certainly if you, the council, that saw some things that you liked or didn't like out there, send me a note, send me an email, or give me a call. I'd be happy to take those and we'll put it into consideration. But you're 100% right about the ATM. I think we had about 75 requests for an ATM that day. So we actually even tried to see if we could get one there for Saturday, but we just weren't able to work it out.
It was a wonderful event. Well done. And that had to take a lot of hours, and I saw a lot of staff out there, right, on their own hours, and it was impressive. So well done. And I think, Eric's right that each event has built off the other event.
Absolutely.
But what you pulled off this year, whether it be perfect weather or not, is only going to build on the excitement for next year. And you guys pulled it off, at least publicly, I think flawlessly. And so well done. My one suggestion would be to handicap the bag contest. And if you could shorten the distance for Weaver, I'm okay with my wife and our team's fine, but the Weaver takes it personal when he doesn't get past third or fourth to the last. So handicap that for him and we'll be good.
Maybe we could just do a council division next year, and
or just a Weaver event. Yeah, and he could win.
Ted, do you have a rebuttal? I see your mic is on now.
I do, but it's probably not
appropriate.
It's not appropriate for this venue. Yeah.
Does anyone have anything appropriate to add at this?
Well, I do.
Oh,
And
please
that
do,
is,
Susan.
I volunteered in the Community Foundation tent, and I think it was the first time the Clive Community Foundation really had much of a presence there, but just wanted to thank you for helping to facilitate that. I think it was a good opportunity to really talk about the foundation and what it does, as well as a place to promote what's going to be happening with the Greenbelt Triad projects, et cetera. So
they were a great presence there. And actually, they had originally only planned to be there, I think, from 4 to 7 on both nights. But Bob realized that once the sun went down and that TV was on, he actually generated a lot more attention after dark. So he's like, I'm glad I stayed around and we're able to talk to a lot of people and made a lot of good connections. And that's one of the things we really want to focus on for next year is being very intentional about things like that. How do we engage more of our Clive businesses and organizations in the festival itself? And so we're really excited about the possibility of doing that next year and seeing where we can take it from here, really building on the long history of this event and how do we really just keep it moving forward and being something that, Clive can be very proud of.
Yeah, kudos, great job all around. Anything else on the Clive Festival? If not, we'll move to reports, and Pete will start with you.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, it was referenced briefly earlier in the conversation tonight, but the partnership's annual DC trip, which was rescheduled to this fall from what was supposed to be this spring, unfortunately now has been canceled again with expectations that we'll get back on the schedule this spring of 2022. Disappointing. Obviously, this is a very important trip when we get to steward relationships with our elected officials and also their staff. However, it's not the only way that we can do those things. And so we'll be making sure that we share our legislative priorities with staff and with the elected officials over the coming months, certainly at the federal level. And then as we approach the start of the state legislative session, we'll be sharing that information with our state legislators and other stakeholders as well. There are a few places in particular where Clive has distinguished itself among other municipalities in Iowa, many places, in fact. One of those is when it was with stormwater and how we think about water resources. To that end, I will be presenting at a couple different events on the horizon. One will be an event sponsored by the Iowa Stormwater Partnership, ISWEP, at their iStorm conference. And then I'll also be presenting with Doug at Des Moines Waterworks annual Citizen Academy that's happening later this fall. So more opportunities for us to talk about the Clive Way as we think about some of these major strategic priorities in front of the city that you have all set. Last, Matt will, I'm sure, talk about this and you'll see it in his Friday update as well, but we are featuring a pretty big piece with the data about where we are right now with the pandemic and with COVID in the upcoming newsletter. As we have throughout the pandemic, we're striking that very positive tone and asking people to be responsible, look out for each other, and help do what it takes to get our economy back running, get our social lives back together as well. This is identical to information that's up on the website right now as well. We want to emphasize how important it is right now for folks. If you haven't already, take advantage of these miracle vaccines. Go out and do it as soon as you can. Do it for our schools, do it for our businesses. This is going to be what it takes to get us back up and running, more so than we already are at this point. Dr. Honor, I'd be happy to take questions.
Questions for Pete? Seeing none. Ted?
Nothing tonight, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes, the Citizens Advisory Committee for the District 1 86th Street Neighborhood Planning met. We discussed the open house and talked a little bit more about that, specifically about the project, parks and open spaces, redevelopment, the circulation network, the green infrastructure, housing, and also interpretation of it. We just discussed the feedback we received at the open house. All very positive.
Very good.
And you'll be seeing more of that output and feedback coming towards the council as well.
Thanks, Eric. Susan?
I enjoyed attending, along with you, John, the retirement event for Isle from the fire department. I know he's sad to go, but has conflict with his schedule at the sheriff's department. So I just like to acknowledge what a great job he's done for the city for 22 years. Really, really sorry to see him go, and nothing further.
And you might add, he has served as Santa Claus for, what did he say, 20 of those years?
Oh, that's right.
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about there.
What?
Santa Claus, he lives further north.
He's in the North Pole.
Oh, excuse me. I stand corrected, Pete.
I like to be thoughtful about our audience here. That's,
Professor, did you hire him? Were you here when he was hired? Santa, that is, not.
Yes, I was clear on your question.
I do not have anything.
Nothing from council, Matt?
The only thing I have tonight is just, again, my thanks and appreciation for all the time you spent over the last couple of weeks working on the strategic plan and the update. Again, it's very critical for staff to hear your priorities and your direction through that process. We're already working on the final reports and already starting to work on some of those actions that you identified as top and high priorities, and look forward to bringing that back for the full kind of council approval of the strategic plan update here in a future meeting here soon. So that's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions for me.
Any questions for Matt? Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Seeing none, we will adjourn at 7:24. Thank you all.
Have a good night.